Welcome to Face the State, Connecticut's most watched local political and public affairs program. I'm Dennis House. The wheels are already turning in the state Democratic Party for the election of 2010. Democrats now make up the entire congressional delegation, most of the mayor's positions in the state and the General Assembly, but what they really want is that top job of governor. And here with us today is the 2006 nominee for governor, the mayor of New Haven, John DeStefano. Mayor DeStefano, nice to see you again. Thanks for being back.
Good to be here this morning, Dennis.
Just a couple months you were back. First of all, last time you were here, you said you hadn't ruled out running for governor again. What do you think?
I think I've done it once and fought through a convention, a Democratic primary against Dan Malloy, and then took on Governor Jody Rell. And it was a wonderful experience, and it was a hard experience, and I knew why I was doing it every day. For me this time, it's two questions got to be answered, City of New Haven and City of New Haven. First, in the best of times, Hartford, Bridgeport, and New Haven are challenging places to run. And in these times, I think they're going to be extraordinarily difficult to run. My first responsibility is to make sure the city navigates through the next year. And I got to be able to answer that question first. And I'm going to wait to make sure I can do that. The second issue is not so much who, but what. I mean, what's important to get done? And I think it's pretty clear in Connecticut. Job growth is important in Connecticut. Stopping these foreclosures is important. And beginning to think about how we set the stage for growth when this terrible time is over. And I'm interested to see that New Haven's agenda, the kinds of issues that face a place like New Haven, is represented. And if there isn't someone doing that, and that kind of agenda is out there, sure, I'll do it. But I want to get New Haven through the next part of the coming year.
So a decision on the governor?
I don't feel pressure to do it. You know.
Okay. So whenever, if it just.
I don't feel pressure to make that decision now.
Okay.
4 years ago, it was a bigger deal because I was lesser known quantity. I've been there, won a primary. I feel I can compete.
So you're going to focus on running for re-election in New Haven.
I'm going to focus on making sure New Haven gets through this next year. That's my first job.
And if you win re-election next year, it's a record, correct? Is it?
Yeah, it's a record. I don't know. There's some guy in colonial times. Who knows? I mean, that doesn't, you know.
What would be your advice for the Democratic Party as they seek the governorship in 2010?
Really, to be clear in the message to the state. You know, 2 years ago when I ran, I got up every morning knowing what I was talking about, which is how do we grow jobs, how do we extend health care in this state, and how do we grow in a smart fashion. Mass transit, keep suburbs, rural areas, and cities be vibrant. And I really think this issue's message. I think we tend to talk about who's running. Is Dan Malloy going to run? Sue Bysewicz, the Attorney General, Ned Lamont, someone else. I really think it's about the ideas. And I think it's really about a vision of government that says, you know, we can grow this smart state in a smart, effective way and be number one.
Has Governor Rell been good for the cities or bad for the cities?
I think it's been a tough time for the cities and for the state as a whole. But, you know, I mean, look, I ran against Governor Rell in 2006. And I'm very aware that I'm not the governor. The state felt comfortable with the governor then. I think this is a different time. You know, look, I work with Governor Rell, and I can't say she isn't responsive when we talk, but I'd like to see more, sure.
If do you ever wonder, like, if you were governor today, if you had won, what you'd be doing differently?
You know, I don't think so much that. I think, you know, look, 2 years ago it was a world of difference what we face today. I do think about this. I do think about, you know, this third quarter that just ended, we had the highest number of foreclosures in the state that we've ever had, something like 1,800 foreclosures. Do I think we're doing enough? No, I don't think we're doing enough. Do I think we should be just trying to balance the budget? No, I think we should be trying to balance the budget, but in a way that creates a foundation for economic growth going forward. Do I think we should be spending $150 million a year on film tax credits and have a more sensible corporate tax structure in the state? Absolutely, there are things that I think we ought to be doing. But you know what? You don't have to run for governor today to do that. There's a legislative session coming up. These issues could be debated, and there's going to be plenty of time to run for governor.
Let's talk about some of the people who may run for governor for your party, and we have a list that we've put together here. First of all, we have House Speaker Jim Amon, Attorney General Richard Blumenthal, Stamford Mayor Dan Malloy, as you mentioned, and Susan Bysewicz, Secretary of the State. Let's talk about Mr. Blumenthal a little bit, because at least two people on that list say they're going to wait and see what he does. He's going to make an announcement sometime in early January. What do you think he does? Do you think he wants to be governor?
I think Dick will probably run this time.
You think so?
Yes, I do.
Wow, you're like the first Democrat who said that.
No, well, I mean, you know, I just look at the numbers. I think Senator Dodd runs for re-election in 2 years. And I've come to the conclusion in the last month that Senator Lieberman is going to run for re-election in 4 years. Maybe I'm wrong about both those things. I think both those fellows are going to stay in place and try to run again. I think it's likely Dick will run. To me, that isn't the issue. To me, the issue is what is Dick's agenda in running for governor, and I want to hear what that is.
What kind of things would you like to see the next governor address? The next Democrat address in the next campaign for governor?
How we're going to grow jobs and create an environment that's friendly for jobs. I think that has a lot to do with a tax code now that is all over the place, that's confusing for businesses, how we permit and enable businesses to grow in the state, how we support mass transportation, rail particularly, and air service in this state, our ports. I think how do we make this as a good place to do business? I think that's going to be the principal issue that's facing the state of Connecticut. How do we grow wealth and how do we grow jobs? And if I had an issue with the current administration, I'd even say this about the General Assembly, as well as, in this land of steady habits, we've been pretty steady in a time that really needs aggressive, pro-growth government.
We're going to talk about your city in just a moment. When we come back, what recession? Both Hartford and New Haven are bustling with construction workers these days. We'll talk to Mayor DeStefano about a new project in his city when we come back. The city of New Haven is about to add a sparkling new skyscraper to its skyline. 360 State is a 30-story tower on the site of the old Schartenberg department store. It'll be mixed use, one of the biggest residential and retail developments in our state. Really a beautiful building. With us again is the mayor of New Haven, John DeStefano. So, Mayor, tell us a little bit about this project for those of us who aren't all that familiar with it.
This lot has been vacant for 43 years. It's the last piece of vacant downtown land, save for the Coliseum site, which we're negotiating with Northland Development to do something on. And what's happening in downtown is the demand for rental marketing is powerful. Our occupancies are all holding. We have 12,000 people live in downtown New Haven, and rents are trending up. And this would seem this is a weird time for a residential project to start pretty much anywhere in the United States. But the demand is there. And really the story to me isn't so much that, because it's just servicing demand that's coming from elsewhere, which is our major employers, our educational, medical, and research institutions. And they're growing. I mean, if you look at where the Cancer Center is growing, which is a 500,000 square foot building, there is 700,000 of additional taxable space being built around that. The university continues to grow. And we've made a choice that even though much of the university is tax exempt, to grow it because it creates jobs. And frankly, it creates demand such as for this project, 360 State, that'll add 400 permanent jobs, is adding 1,800 construction jobs. It'll pay us about $1.4 million in taxes a year. So
that's a nice chunk of change.
Well, and I think it's understanding where we're competitive and what we're good at. And again, we're eds and meds, research institutions, grow them, and the surrounding book of business is growing as well. And we've gotten to the point in downtown New Haven where there is not vacant land. And really for us, the issue is how do we grow the footprint of our downtown? And that really leads us to what we see the next stage of development over the next decade, which is the removal of the Route 34 highway that separates the downtown with the university and the business district from Union Station and from the medical school and hospital complex, and reuniting what was separated during the urban renewal days of the 1950s and 60s.
And so there's also talk of lowering I-95 around there too, is that correct?
It's not, it's Route 34 that comes from I-95. Okay. It's actually removing the highway. Okay. The highway goes nowhere. And in fact, the fastest growing parts of the city are on either side, and we need to grow the footprint of downtown. And downtown is important because half the jobs and nearly 70% of the revenues in our city budget that are locally derived come from the downtown. When you grow the downtown, you grow the wealth and job base of the city.
Seems to me also this past summer when gas hit $4.30 a gallon, a lot of people started looking back at the city saying, you know what, why am I commuting in and out when I could live there? Are you finding that as well?
It's a powerful issue, and people are looking for different things. I mean, a lot of people like sidewalks. They like being able to walk out their doors, you will, at 360 State Street and go across the street to our commuter trains. We have 2 train stations downtown. This is our commuter train station. This linkage of transportation assets, mass transit assets, to residential, to frankly what's a pretty vibrant downtown in the city of New Haven has been good, and it has been growing. And frankly, our biggest budget problem is not that we're not growing. It's the state of Connecticut's budget problems is our biggest budget problem.
Let's say that you have a couple, some empty nesters in Madison, and you run into them, and they're thinking of coming to New Haven. What would you tell them? How would you sell them in the city?
The city sells itself. I mean, the city sells itself from everything from the museums to the galleries to the things you're able to do, the restaurants and the retail in the city. And what we do tend to get is that company from Madison, probably my age and in my situation, right? Two boys, 22, 24, they're just out of the house, and you're looking for something different as you grow older, and you're anticipating probably a more active lifestyle than our parents enjoyed. But what we're seeing in New Haven fundamentally is that the job base, research, medical, educational related, is growing. That's what's driving the demand for the taxable housing, retail, and commercial occupancies around it.
We're going to hear from some developers who are building in Hartford because they think now is a good time because the economy's bad. You might get a better deal. Do you agree with that? I mean,
no, I think it's actually what we're saying is what I said earlier. We're seeing rents going up. Yeah. I don't think it's necessarily a better time. I think it's whether you figured out what makes you attractive, competitive, and distinct from anybody else, and therefore able to compete.
Where do you see New Haven 5 years from now in terms of other things you'd like to get built downtown?
Frankly, right now I've got an issue that I really want to work on, which has to do with the neighborhoods. It has to do with making sure our neighborhood housing stock stabilizes. Our housing stock, like most of the cities of Connecticut, Hartford and Bridgeport, is mostly rental, and I'm concerned about the number of foreclosures we've seen in the neighborhoods. And I don't want to lose sight of the importance of that, and I don't want to lose sight of the importance of our public schools in terms of the attractiveness to the city. Those remain principal sources of attention for us. But when you talk about the next couple of years, what I do see, Route 34 will be gone. I mean, basically this highway through the center of the city will be gone. The urban renewal areas of the 60s that went towards the train station, I see largely being filled up with commercial and institutional medical and educational uses, and basically the downtown growing from the green to Union Station. And then beyond that, over time, it'll grow into Long Wharf, in the area around IKEA, and it'll be more vertical rather than horizontal development. But I think what's important for us is to keep a focus on what we do well, which is these institutional uses, good quality of life, choices for people, and I'll just add one other thing. Being a city that's opening and welcoming. A metaphor for that for us has been this immigration issue in lots of ways, and I say it just as a metaphor, which is to be open to different kinds of people. That's what we do well. I mean, we're a city, and I think cities attract people because of the choices that exist in them, and I think for us that remains the focus.
What do you see coming from Northland?
I think Northland is going to do what the market wants it to do, which is more housing over time. I think you'll see some reasonable commercial development, and that, frankly, it's going to pivot off of its proximity both to the transportation infrastructure, I mean, a train station on either side, and its proximity to the medical school. I think that's what you'll see there. Long Wharf Theater will relocate to the site, and frankly, one of the state's largest insurance companies is right there, which is the Knights of Columbus, although we don't often think of it that way.
Mayor John DeStefano, nice to see you again, and of
Dennis,
course, this is the place to announce if you decide to run for governor.
Yes, there's you and Leno.